Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Dini and Dini from Group 6. And we explain about experimental research. And here I'd like to explain about the definition of experimental research, or what experimental research is. From what I read on Mrs. Nita's PowerPoints on Google Classroom, I can conclude that the experimental research is the research when the researchers controls other relevant factors when manipulating at least one independent variable and observes the effect on one or more dependent variables. So the terms experimental research refers to a research in which the researchers manipulates one or more independent variables while controlling any other relevant factors and observing the effect of the manipulation on the dependent variables. So in experimental research, the researchers has total control over the independent variable. For example, if you want to conduct an experiment or you want to make an experimental research titled the effect of, for example, the effect of a grammar translation method on students' writing skills. So one thing that we need to highlight is the independent variable of that research is grammar translation method, because why? As we know that grammar translation method affect the students' writing skills, and then after that, the researchers or you, the one who made this research, will observe or measure the effect of the manipulation on the dependent variable. I think that's all from me. The next presenter is Muhammad Azka. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Muhammad Azka. My student's number is 1921222076, and I want to explain about characteristic of experimental research. First is random assignment. Random assignment is the process of assigning individuals at random to groups or to different groups in an experiment. And the purpose of random assignment is to ensure that groups receiving different treatments are as reasonably equal or similar in any way that could possibly impact the outcome. It is important to note that random assignment and random selection do not refer to the same process. Rather, random selection refers to the process of selecting individuals so each individual has an equal chance of being selected. And second is control. Mm, Control of variables is the essence of the experiment method. When a study is complete, researchers want to attribute the outcome to the experimental treatment. To do this, they must eliminate all other possible uh, explanation by controlling the influence of irrelevant variables. Without controlling, it is impossible to evaluate unambiguously the effect of an independent variable or to make inference about causality. Uh, Basically, the experimental method of science rests on to assumption regarding variables. Uh, First is if two situations are equal in every respect except for a variable that is added or to or deleted from one of the situation, uh, Any difference appearing between the two situations can be attributed to that variable, and this statement is called the law of the single independent variable. If two situations are not equal, but it can be demonstrated that none of the variable except the independent uh, variable is significant in producing the phenomenon under investigation, or if significant variable other than the independent variable are made equal, then any difference occurring between the two situations after introducing a new variable to one of the system can be attributed to the new variable. This statement is called the law of the single significant variable. And an extraneous variable is a variable that is not related to the purpose of the study but may affect the dependent variable. And third is manipulation of treatment. The manipulation of an independent variable is a deliberate operation performed by the experimenter. In educational research and other behavioral science, the manipulation of an independent variable involves uh, setting up different treatment conditions. Treatment is another word for the experimental manipulation uh, of the independent variable. The different treatment conditions administered to the subject in the experiment are the levels of the independent variables. And the last is measurement of outcomes. In an experiment, the two variables of major interest are the independent variable and the dependent variable. The independent variable is manipulated or changed by the experimenter, and the variable on which the effect of the change are observed is called the dependent variable, which is observed but not manipulated by the experimenter. For example, to examine the effect of different teaching methods on achievement in reading, a researcher would manipulate the method or the independent variable by using different teaching methods in order to assess uh, their effect on reading achievement or the independent variable.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ridwan Pumansa. My student's number is 1921220 and 6. In this video, I'm going to explain about validity of experimental research. Alright, validity is the most important consideration in developing and evaluating measuring instruments. And validity encompasses the entire experimental concept and establishes whether the result obtained meet all of the requirement of the scientific research method. For instance, there must have been randomization of the sample groups and appropriate care and diligence shown in the allocation of control. All right. Talking about validity, we have internal validity and external validity. Internal validity is the extent to which you may be confident that a cause and effect relationship discovered in a study cannot be explained by other factors. Yeah. Or all right. We can say a study establishes a trustworthy cause and effect relationship between a treatment and an outcome. Internal validity also reflects that a given study makes it possible to eliminate alternative explanation for a finding. All right, that's it for the internal validity. Yeah, and the second one is external validity. Yeah. External validity is the amount to which the findings or study may be applied to different circumstances, persons, places, and measures is known as external validity. Yeah. All right. The validity of applying the conclusion of a scientific study outside the context of that study. Yeah. In other words, it is the extent to which the result of study can be generalized to and across other situation, people, stimulate, and times. Yeah, that's it, guys. Validity of experimental research, internal and external validity. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, my name is Ilma Nasyifa. My student's number is 192122075. I would like to explain about experimental research design. Experimental research design is the process of carrying out research in an objective and controlled fashion so that precision is maximized and specific conclusion can be drawn regarding a hypothesis statement. Generally, the purpose is to establish the effect that a factor or independent variable has on a dependent variable. The types of experimental research designs are determined by the way the researchers assign subject to different conditions and groups. There are three types, namely pre-experimental, quasi-experimental, and true experimental design. The first is pre-experimental designs. In pre-experimental designs, either a group or various dependent groups are observed for the effect of the application of an independent variable which is presumed to cause change. It is the simple form of experimental research design and is treated with no control group. And then the pre-experimental design is further divided into three types. The first is one-shot case study. In this type, only one dependent group or variable is considered. The study is carried out after some treatment which was presumed to cause change, making it a post-test study. And then the second is one group pre-test post-test. This research design combines both post-test and pre-test study by carrying out a test on a single group before the treatment is administered and after the treatment is administered, with the former being administered at the beginning of treatment and later at the end. And the last is static group comparison. In this study, two or more groups are placed under observation, where only one of the group is subjected to some treatment while the other groups are held static. All the groups are post-test and the observed differences between the groups are assumed to be a result of the treatment. And then the second is quasi-experimental design. The quasi-experimental design bearing a resemblance to the true experimental research, but not the same. In quasi-experiments, the participants are not randomly assigned, and as such, they are used in settings where randomization is difficult or impossible. And then the last is true experimental design. The true experimental design relies on statistical analysis to approve or disprove a hypothesis. It is the most accurate type of experimental design and may be carried out with or without a pretest on at least two randomly assigned dependent subjects. The true experimental research design must contain a control group, a variable that can be manipulated by the researcher, and the distribution must be random. And then the classification of true experimental design include the first is the first test only control group designs. In this design, subjects are randomly selected and assigned to the two groups. It is control and experimental, and only the experimental group is treated. After close observation, both groups are posted and a conclusion is drawn from the difference between these groups. The second is the pretest post-test control group design. For this control group design, subjects are randomly assigned to the two groups. Both are presented, but only the experimental group is treated. After close observation, both groups are post-test to measure the degree of change in each group. And then the last is element for group design. This is the combination of the pre-test only, and the pre-test post-test control groups. In this case, the randomly selected subjects are placed into 4 groups. The first 2 of this group are tested using the post-test only method, while the other 2 are tested using the pre-test post-test method. Alright, maybe that's all from me. Thank you.
Afternoon. Let me introduce myself. My name is Luthfi and we are from Experimental Research Group, or we are from 6th group. And in this occasion, I would like to explain about advantages and disadvantages experimental research itself. As you can see, there are 5 aspects. The first is gain insight into method of instruction, intuitive practice shaped by research, and the next teacher have bias but can be reflective. Researcher can have control over variable, and the last is humans perform experiment anyway. And these advantages have control over independent variable, simple determination of causal relationship, possibility of verifying a result through replicability or repeatability, and the ability to create conditions that are not easily observed in natural settings or would take too long to create are the most obvious advantages. And the next topic is disadvantages for experimental research. There are 5 aspects too. The first one is subject to human error. Personal bias of researcher may intrude. The next is sample may not be representative, and so on. This advantages is unnaturalness, which may the result in outcomes not found in natural situation or the same degree, and the difficulty in generalizing, that is applying the result to a real life situation, and this part because the sample or situation may not be representative, and ethical consideration are just a few of the drawbacks. And both of advantages and disadvantages have excellent experimental design because it's useful tool. It cannot be applied to all sort of research research issues. As a consequence of investigator mistake or the inability to control for all irrelevant factor, and a result may appear to be significant. I think that's all for my explanation. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.